Hello. Today I want to show you how you can write code to detect when the price crosses an arbitrary trend line that you've drawn on screen. So here I have a trend line on screen which I could place anywhere that I like, and what I want to do is detect when the price crosses that trend line. Now I've just drawn this one at random, but it could easily be a line that's following a price trend, and I want to know when the price is breaking out from that. And my definition is going to be any bar that closes on the opposite side of the trend line. So let's roll the disclaimer and then I'll be back to show the code. Now just to explain what we're looking for here. Here we've got an example. This bar, the body of the bar is completely below the trend line that I have on the chart. And the following bar has closed above the trend line. Doesn't matter where it opens as long as it closes above. So that's what I'm looking for. A bar that is completely to one side of the trend line and the next bar closes on the other side. There's another example here that's slightly different. This bar is completely below the trend line. Even though the wick of this crosses the trend line, I'm not interested in the wick, only the body. So the body is completely below and the next candle closes above, so closes on the opposite side. That's what I'm looking for. You might think that the next candle is a case then of crossing below this down candle, but because the price gapped up here and then went down, the candle before this downward candle, before this bearish candle, wasn't entirely above the trend line, so this won't be counted as a cross. So what I'm looking for is one bar where the body is completely to one side of the trend line and the very next bar, the close is on the other side of the trend line. So let's move into the code. First, we're going to create a class that I can use to monitor for this, and then I'll create a script that we'll use to test that class. Then I'll create an indicator that will pop up an alert anytime there is a cross of the trend line, and then an expert advisor that will actually trade when we cross the trend line. Now I've just created a new include file. I've put it here under my include orchard classes, and I called it trend level. And I've already entered a comment at the beginning of the file. I'm looking for breaks of a trend, so first thing I'll do is create an enum that can tell me what type of break I have. So I'm calling my enum OFX trend break, and there are three types. Break none, which is no break. Breaking above, which means the previous candle was entirely below and the new candle has closed above, and break below, which is obviously the opposite of that. And then I'm creating this as a class. So my class definition, I'm calling the class C trend level. Now I'm not calling this trend level break. Class names should refer to some kind of object. So I'm looking at the trend level, and break is one of the things that might happen with that trend level. So the naming of the class is just the trend level. I'm looking at a trend line that I've drawn on screen. Those lines have names. Let me just go back to the chart here. If I look at the properties for this trend line, under common, I've given this one a name of my trend line. And that's what we're going to be looking for in the code. I've got a private string M level name. Next, the constructor and destructor. So in the constructor, for C trend level, I'm passing in a string value, and that's the level name that I'm looking for. And here I'm actually calling a function that I haven't created yet for level name. I'm going to have a setter and getter function for level name. So I'm just passing that to the setter function. And in the destructor, there is nothing to do. So I've just got the empty brackets here. Here are the setter and getter. So set level name and get level name. So set level name accepts a string value, which is just the name of the level. And all I'm doing here is assigning that level name to the M level name that we defined above. And the get level name just returns the M level name. Apart from this one instance, then today I won't be using this, but it's a useful function to have. And then the key function of all of this is to know when we've got a break. So there's a function called getBreak, which returns a type of enum OFX trend break. And int index, this is the bar number that I'm looking at. Typically, if you're writing an expert advisor or an indicator, you'll be looking at bar number 1, because you won't know a break has happened. You won't know that bar has closed until you move on to the next bar. So you'll always be looking at bar 1. Although when I run the script to test this, I'll actually be passing a range of indexes through so that we can see it happening quickly. And now here is the getBreak function. So it's type enum OFX trend break. because it's a class function, I start with the class name, double colon, get break, and passing in the index. First thing I want to do is know if the object that is named by level name exists on screen. So I'm using the object find method, chart number 0, passing the level name. If that object cannot be found, this will return a negative value. So if that returns a value less than 0, I'm just going to return no break. Then I'm going to grab some values. The previous open, I'm using the IOpen function, passing in the symbol, period, and index +1. So this is the bar before. I'm getting the open for that, and then I'm doing the same for the close. So now I have the open and close for the previous bar. And then of course I want the close for the bar that's just been passed in the index number. Then I need to know the times that those bars open. So I've got the previous time, and I'm using the itime function here, index +1, which gives me the open or the start time of the bar before the index bar, and time will be the start time for the bar of the index. So as I said, in an indicator, this index is probably 1. So I'm looking at the open time for the bar number 1 and the previous time for bar number 2. And then I want to get the value. Now this is the key function here. I'm getting the value of the trend line. If we look at the trend line, you can see it's sloping down. So at each point along this line, it is at a different price level. The get value, which will give me the value of the price on the trend line at that bar number. So here, previous value, object get value by time, chart number 0, the level name, so this is the object that I'm looking at on screen, and previous time. So it tells me the value of that trend line at that time. And then of course I'm getting the value for the bar that I'm looking at. So then all I have to know if the previous value is equal to 0 or the value is equal to 0. Now these are important because if I'm outside the range of that trend line, then I could be getting a 0 value. It typically happens at the 1 bar just before the trend line starts. So if I've got a value of 0 from the trend line, I'm just going to return no break. Then first test, if the previous open is less than the previous value, so it opened below the trend line, and the previous close is less than the previous value, so it also closed below the trend line. So this is the bar that is completely to one side of the trend line, and in this case below. And the close now of bar number index is above the value of the trend line, so the next bar has closed above, then I've had a break above. And then exactly the opposite. If the previous open is above the trend line and the previous close is above the trend line, and the latest close is below the trend line, then I've had a break below. And if we fall through those conditions, then obviously there hasn't been a break, and I return break none. And that's a complete class for detecting trend breaks. Let me just make sure that compiles. So next I'm going to create the script to test this. So now I've opened up a new script file, and I've already pasted in my comment and the beginning property lines. I'm going to have an input because my script needs to know the name of that trend line on screen. So I've got the property show inputs, and that will make the script ask for inputs when it starts running. Next I want to bring in that class that I've just developed. So this is include orchard classes trend level. That's where I've placed the class file that we just created. And then, as I said, I need the name of that trend line. I don't know what it is. There's no point putting a default value here, so I'm defaulting to null. But this is where I'll be entering that my trend line in my example case here. And then the purpose of this script is that I can run through a whole series of bars so that I can test the function quickly. So just for the purposes of the test, I'm going to input a start bar and an end bar, and the script will loop through all of those bars and run the break test on each of those. And then the main body of the script. I'm defining a variable of type C trend level. This is my class, and I'm declaring a pointer to a trend level, an object that I'm calling trend level, and creating that with the new statement. So it's a new C trend level, and here is the trend level name that was entered in the inputs. Then I'm declaring a variable that I'm calling BRK of type enum OFX trend break. And then here is the loop. I'm looping through for I equals the start bar number. So I'm starting to the left with bar number 99 if you've used the defaults. As long as I is greater than or equal to the end bar number, and I minus minus, so I'm counting down towards the right. First thing I'm doing is grabbing the value for break. And that's just calling trend level.getBreak function that we wrote in the class. And I'm passing in I, so this is the bar number that I'm looking at. So I'm trying to find out if bar number I has broken the trend line. And then I'm just using a switch statement, switch on break, because although break's an enum, enums are just integers, so I can use a switch statement on an enum. So if there's no break, nothing to do here. If I have a break above, then I'm going to display a message box showing break above at, and then just show the bar number. And then the same thing if I have a break below, but I'm going to be displaying a message that says break below. And finally, I'm cleaning up, I just delete the trend level object. So that's the script completely. Let me just compile that, and that worked. And now we can go to the chart. So I run trend line cross, here are my inputs, name of trend line. I can leave the starting bar at 99 and end bar at 0, it'll just count down. And I say OK, and it says that I have a break above at bar number 31. So if I use the crosshair here, beginning at bar number 0, which is the current bar, and counting backwards, I have a break above, there we go, that's bar number 31 according to my crosshairs. Okay, and it says I have another break above at 26. And there we go, at 26, according to the crosshairs, I've got a break above. And there are no more. Now a quick tip here, I'm running this when the markets are closed, so it's not a problem. If you were testing this during the day and the markets are active, you don't want new bars to be created all the time while you're trying to run this test. So you might find it easier to set a very long time frame while you're testing. So a daily, for example, won't be creating new bars while you're testing this. Now the other thing I can show here, if I change this trend line to array, then it will extend further out to the right, and now there are more crosses. So without changing the script that I have, I've now extended the trend line, and if I run this again, I get break above at 31, break above at 26, and now I'm also getting break below at 12, break above at 9. So the trend line's extended and it's picked those up, where previously, because the trend line ended here, it didn't pick up these extra crosses. I'll just change that back now. So that's a script to test it. The class code that I've written also works in MT5, but the script does need a slight change. So I'll just flip over to MetaTrader 5 and show you the script and the difference if you're running MT5. Now I've changed to MT5, I've copied the script completely, and I've already compiled, and there's this one error, show inputs unknown property. In MT5, just change that to script show inputs and compile, and that will all work now. So a very small change just for running the script in MT5. Now I've just created an indicator in MT4. Under indicators, I've placed under indicators orchard trend line break. Refresh there. And I've just updated the comments here. Property indicator chart window. That's actually irrelevant because I won't be actually displaying any indicator on chart. I'm just going to use this to pop up alerts when the trend line is crossed. To begin, we have the include statement, the same orchard classes trendlevel.mqh, that will include the class file. I'm going to input a single string, which is the trend level name, which we needed in this script. I don't need the bar numbers for the indicator because the indicator is only going to be looking at each bar as it closes. So it's always going to know that it's looking at bar number 1. And then I'm also declaring a type of C trend level, which is a pointer to an object which I'm calling trend level. In the init section, I only need one statement. I need to create my trend level object, and that's just a new C trend level passing in the trend level name. The wizard didn't create a dinit, but I do need a dinit in this case. So when we finish the indicator, I need to delete that trend level object because I created it. It will occupy memory if I don't do this. And then in the onCalculate section, very similar to the script, I do have an isNewBar, which I will show in a moment. Then I'm again declaring my BRK variable of type OFX trend break, calling the get break, and I'm always passing in bar number 1. So if we have a new bar, then I'm checking to see if the bar that's just closed has broken. And then the same switch statement. If I've had no break, then nothing happens. If I have had a break above, then I'm going to use the alert, and my message is going to use the string format. So I'm going to say symbol time has broken above the trend line, and then I'm going to give the name of that trend line. And the same thing if the trend has broken below. Symbol time has broken below the trend line, name of trend line. Very simple, almost exactly the same as the script. And the only thing remaining here is the isNewBar function, which I talk about all the time. I'm getting the current time from the iTime function for the symbol and period. I have a static variable of date time, which is the previous time. If those two are different, then I simply make them the same and return true because the bar time must have changed. And if they are the same, then I just return false because we don't have a new bar. Let me make sure I haven't made any simple typing errors. That compiled. And now I'll go into the chart and run this in the strategy tester so that you can see it happening. Now I have the indicator loaded in the strategy tester ready to go, and I've updated the property to my trend line so that it can find the trend line. So let me start that. And then I'll just speed through part of the video in the editor so that you don't have to wait for this. Now, this is the point where I have had a break. The strategy tester will not display alerts. They won't display as a pop-up, but they do show in the journal. So let me open the journal here, and we can see trend line break, and this is the alert, break above trend line, my trend line. Let me go back and I'll just run it forward again for a while to the second break. And let that run a bit too far, but there should be something in the journal to show a second break there. And there it is. Alert Euro US, break above trend line, my trend line. So that's the example for an indicator. And if I were running this in real time and not in the strategy tester, it would be popping up alert boxes here. Now in MetaTrader 5, I've copied the trendline break MQ4. I've just renamed it to trendline break MQ5, changed the comment here. Other than that, this code is identical, and this also compiles in MetaTrader 5, so this is compatible code. The only difference is I get this warning, no indicator plot defined, and that's, as I said, I'm not displaying any charts on the screen with this indicator, so that's just a warning. You can ignore that, but otherwise this same indicator will work in MetaTrader 5. And now I'm back in MetaTrader 4, where I'm creating an expert advisor that will trade when the price crosses that trend line. So I've just created the trendline break EA file here using the wizard. I've made a little bit of formatting change, but other than that, it's empty. First thing, the include statement to bring in the trend level class. I'm inputting the string so that I have the name of the trend line that you've drawn on screen. And then, because this is an expert advisor, I need to know the volume to trade, a magic number to assign, and a trade comment. And then I'm declaring a variable of type C trend level, which is a pointer to a trend level variable. In the onInit section, exactly as for the indicator, I'm creating an object called trend level with the new C trend level and passing in the name of the trend line that we've drawn on screen. Also, just like the indicator, in the dinit section, I need to delete that trend level so that we free up the memory that it was taking. In the onTick section, This is also not very complex and very similar to the indicator. First, I'm just declaring a working variable price, and I'm initializing that to 0 and a ticket because I'll need to use that in the call to open the order. And I'm initializing that to 0. The same is new bar function that I had in the indicator, and I'll add that in a moment. So if this is a new bar, then declaring my variable of type enum OFX trend break, calling the get break for the just closed bar, so bar number 1. And then the same switch statement as before. So if I've got a break none, then I'm doing nothing. If I've had a break above, then first I need to grab the price for a buy trade, and the symbol ask is the price for buy trade. So symbol info double symbol ask will give me the ask price for the symbol. And then I'm opening an order with the order send, passing in the current chart symbol, order type buy, volume from the input, the price, which is the ask price. I'm using 0 for slippage, stop loss and take profit here, the trade comment, and the magic number. So when the price has crossed above the trend line, I've said that's a break above. That's just the rule that I've defined for this example. And in that case, I want to buy. Once I've done that, I don't want to trigger more trades if the price keeps crossing that trend line. So I'm simply closing down the expert here with the expert remove statement. There are a lot of other things you could do. You could delete the trend line from the screen. You could change the name of the trend line. You could use the set level name function to set that to an empty string so that it won't detect any further changes. A lot of things you can do. I'm just removing the expert. And when we run this in the strategy tester, what you'll see is that trade gets created and immediately closed because the strategy tester will then stop when the expert is removed. But you'll always be able to see that the trade was created. And then of course break just to get out of the switch statement. Exactly the opposite then for the break below. But here I'm getting the bid price for the entry price. Same order send statement, but with the type sell, and then remove the expert so it doesn't trade the next time the price crosses that trend line. All I need then is the same is new bar function that we had in the indicator, and that is a complete expert that will trade when the price crosses the trend line that you've drawn on screen. So now I have the strategy tester set up to run the expert advisor. I'll just put in the name of the trend line that we've drawn. And then I'll start this and accelerate the video till we get to the first, or the only point where it will trade. And now we can see the price has crossed the trend line. And let me just go back to the real chart. What we saw after that point where it crossed was there was a price gap. So the next bar opened up here. That's just a feature of the markets. Not much I can do about that. And that's why in this you can see that the trade has opened so high, because it opened at the beginning of the next bar. But it did that, and then the expert closed, and that's why nothing has happened after this point. And now the expert advisor for MetaTrader 5. Same rules, but the code is a little different for MetaTrader 5. I've started just by copying the MetaTrader 4 code here, because most of it is the same, but there are some changes I need to make. And the changes are because MetaTrader 5 trades differently. The order send function operates differently. But with MetaTrader 5, there is a class provided called trade, and that trade class makes a simpler method of trading. So I'm going to include that first. And that is simply under trade.mqh, and it's delivered with MetaTrader 5. The inputs then are all the same, and I still need my C trend level here, but I also need a trend object. I also need a trade object. Now I'm declaring this as type C trade, which comes from the trade.mqh that we included. I'm not declaring it as a pointer. I'm just declaring it as C trade. By not declaring this as a pointer, I don't need to delete the variable later. It will delete itself. And the next thing I need to do, the trade object, if I'm going to use it with a magic number, I need to set that magic number before I use the object. So there's a method called setExpertMagicNumber, and I'm passing in the magic number from the inputs. Now down in the onTick section, I'm not going to be returning a ticket from the trade function, so I can remove that, and I don't need to calculate the price, so I can remove that. And so this is the trade buy. So it's simply trade.buy, passing in the volume, and the rest of these arguments are optional. I could simply ignore them and leave this with just the volume, but I do want to enter the trade comment, and it happens to be the last argument, so I'm entering all of the others. But symbol, I'm taking from the chart. I'm entering the trade price as 0, which will default to the current applicable price for a trade of type buy. So these are quite simple, they're just zeros, and then the trade comment at the end. And then I don't need these lines at all, and I'm still going to remove my expert once that trade has happened. And then the same thing for the sell, but there is a sell method on the trade object as well. And delete those lines. And just compile to make sure no mistakes there. And that's it. So the code inside the class works perfectly well for MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5. The code changes inside the expert are minimal. The indicator, there is no code change between MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5 other than to change the extension on the file, and a very minor change if you want to run a test script, because you need to have script show inputs instead of just show inputs. So that's a working class that will detect when the price has crossed a trend line that you draw on screen. This could be any trend line at all. You just need to make sure that in the properties for this trend line, you assign a name that you can then use in your script, indicator, or expert. So I hope this has been useful to you. If it has, click the like button. They help us a lot. And if you'd like to see more of these videos, then click subscribe. And if you also click the bell icon, then we will notify you when we release more videos. So until next time, thank you for watching.